Every time we've done this show, we've talked about having grit to overcome obstacles on the way to success. What happens if you don't have grit? What happens if you just give up? Is that happening in our kids today? We're going to talk about it. Dr. Cy Smith, next.
This is A Dash of Grit. Recipes for success from courageous leaders who overcome challenges and build great things. Now, podcasting from Spire to leaders in local communities like yours, here is Brian Leflock.
And let's get cooking. So we've done, I don't even know how many, 80 some episodes of Dash of Grit, and it's always about overcoming hurdles and obstacles in a business leader's, a corporation's, a leader's mind through grit, getting through the tough stuff, overcoming the obstacles that get in our way to success. That's what this show's all about. Today's going to take a little different turn. I want to talk about what happens when you don't have grit. What's going on when you don't overcome the hurdles, when you just lay down. I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation with our guest, the first ever returning guest to Dash of Grit, Dr. Cy Smith. He's the superintendent of Mansfield Christian Schools in Mansfield, Ohio. I'm thrilled to have you back, and I'm thrilled to call you my friend. Dr. Smith, welcome to Dash of Grit.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's an honor to be on again. Always enjoy our conversations.
You helped me start this whole thing. You helped us start this way back in the beginning. I think you were episode number 2.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm so honored. Yeah, thank you.
So after people listen to this, maybe they'll go back and take a look at that because it is still online. So Dr. Smith, we want to talk about grit and perhaps the absence of, and we're going to get into that in a second. But first, talk to me a little bit about success that Mansfield Christian Schools is having in instilling grit into our next generation or our young folks. Tell me what's working for you and for Mansfield Christian Schools.
Right. And we're really scratching the surface because of the need. And we can talk about that in a moment. But certainly we're by no means accomplished. But again, attacking it the best we can and really trying to be intentional with that. And a lot of this goes back to just knowing that, okay, I'm working with a generation that struggles in this area. And I think all the studies indicate that that's the case. And so what can I do? How can I rethink my homework? How can I rethink what we do in class? How can I rethink some of the activities that we know are going to be designed to be challenging, right? I mean, these things are difficult. We want to promote critical thinking. So it's coming. So anticipate that they're going to struggle with this. And then let's start to build into some of these activities, some deliberate steps to make sure that they understand, listen, this is what's in front of you. And so we're calling it, and what we've seen in, Angela Duckworth's or Lisa Duckworth's famous book, Grit, calls it deliberate practice, where you really, my intention here is to master this weakness and then set another goal and move forward. Small steps. And that's, I know that the practice is going to look like that. This is not just homework for the sake of getting it done, checking it off the list. Okay, I can put that subject away. But really learning how to, again, focus on weaknesses, know that it's going to be tough. This homework is designed to be tough. You're going to have to think this through. You're going to have to go several different ways. And guess what? You're probably going to fail throughout the process. And okay, we're not talking about a failing grade. We're just talking about, I'm not going to get it right away. Anticipate that. Tonight's homework or this project in class or whatever we're going to be doing is going to be a challenge. You're going to have stumbling blocks. Here's what you do when you face that stumbling block. Some of that we take for granted in education. I assume that as a human, you're going to get that, and you're going to stay with it, and you're going to overcome. Nope, you can no longer make that assumption. You need to walk them through how to be gritty when you're around and when you're not around. So what does deliberate practice look like in the education setting?
And congratulations for setting that up and doing those things, because it's obvious that it's needed. And that's what I want to talk about. It's not that you're doing this to become even a better school and to do even better things. It's because you're seeing a lack of grit in our young people. You're actually seeing this, I'm not able to, or I'm not willing to overcome the hurdle and do better and try harder. I mean, that's what you're seeing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Right.
Let's start talking about what's going wrong in our society.
Right. Yeah, we in education in all schools, public and private, we're very focused on SEL right now, which is social and emotional learning, because we see that those challenges so much with Generation Z, which is the group that is now in our school system from K-12. And social and emotional learning, things that we study like empathy, social responsibility, civic responsibility, self-control, grit, things like that. So we're all studying these things from a professional development angle. And so when we studied several of those things last year, and then we survey our teachers again, we said, hey, what do you want to talk about more? Because what do you see more is needed and you can help kids? And grit was their number one response. Hey, Dr. Smith, let's dive deeper into grit because we really see that as a struggle for kids. And there's so many variables there. Of course, they live in an instantaneous society. They are used to things come quickly. They're served quickly, no doubt about it. And with that, sometimes they expect things are going to come easy. And so there's a great tendency in this particular generation to, when I hit an obstacle or when I hit a roadblock, if I can't immediately overcome it with a quick fix, it's that I'll just Google it mentality.
Yeah.
And if I don't have the answer right away and it's not at my fingertips, well, I'm really not sure how to struggle through this or if I really want to, because I didn't get, my need met as fast as I can. So they do struggle with that. And our teachers are finding, okay, we have to back up. This is not a situation where mom and dad are going to be talking it through with them in the kitchen. We're going to have to back up and teach them. This is how you persevere.
And what does that look like? I know we talked a little bit about sometimes it shows up even early in the elementary school. What is it? Give me an example of a young person that is displaying a lack of grit. I don't understand that. No one had to teach me grit.
Exactly.
I don't think they did.
Right. Yes. And I asked the teachers, when does this start to show up? And usually it's not long into elementary school. Of course, there's certain behavior if you really focus on a certain child, and you could probably even watch them as early as pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, things like that. But it really starts to take effect, of course, when you start to see all those, I don't know if you remember, but in those lower grades, you're getting O's and standing effort.
I remember.
Performances. You're not getting A's, B's, C's, and D's. Nobody's sending home a kindergartner with a D or an F, something like that. But when you get into those intermediate grades in whatever, second, third, fourth grade, and now all those S's and good efforts start to turn into, this is subpar. It's a C or it's a D. And then the child starts to all of a sudden reflect, and they start to think, or at least understand with the help of the teacher and probably mom and dad that, wow, I'm not really good at this subject, or I'm missing a lot of math problems, or I don't read as well as the other kids. And so for the first time, their obstacles or their challenges, which may be, cognitive certainly, are being called out. And so now I have a decision to make. Yep. Am I going to keep persevering and try to turn that C, D, F into an A and figure this out? Or am I going to say, no, it's too hard. I'm going to throw it in the towel. So it shows up early in elementary. And kids, some kids have a natural bent towards it. Most kids we have found really want to try to learn something. So that's where we really can't lose them there. We can't discourage them. We have to work with them so hard to make them think, hey, listen, you can get this. Let's help walk you through it. But don't make any assumptions that they're just going to do them on their own. Like you said, nobody had to teach me grit. I did. Well, you need to teach it these days. Don't make those assumptions that they're going to overcome it.
So let me push back though, because I'm starting to feel like the old crotchety old curmudgeon here. I never had to do that when I was a kid. What's wrong with kids these days? I don't want to do that. Is it just that we're old and we don't understand youth today? It's a different mentality. They've got their devices and we didn't have Google. We had to have grit to learn who created the cotton gin or whatever they taught me back in school. They don't have to learn that now. So are we being too hard in forcing grit, or do we really see a need? What's the future going to look like if we don't do the kind of work that you're doing right now?
That's a great point, because the research shows that grit very much is determined by your life experiences. And so there are some inherent things in your DNA. If your parents were naturally gritty people, the likelihood that you probably will be also. But it's also equally true that the culture, the generation, the life experiences that are required to be successful today are different than they were for you and I as likely Gen Xers, and certainly of the boomers and the silent generation that remains. I mean, there's just undisputed evidence there that, again, this creates grit. And the surveys show also that in not only still in the workforce, because they're fading fast out of the workforce, but of the generations today, when they do these grit studies, the boomers are still, that group that's 65 and older, they're still the grittiest generation around. And who had the grittiest life experiences to call that out? Them. And it's not just because, because I happen to be placed there, I show grit. No, life was much different when I was a teenager and when I was in my 20s and 30s and things like that. So as a result, in my 60s, 70s, 80s, I'm very much full of grit. And so, yeah, it's definitely there's a generational dynamic here that's a result of life experiences that doesn't lend itself well to the cultivation of grit. You and I, we're not harvesting crops by any stretch.
That's right.
Table, right? And our needs are relatively met. Go on and on about that.
Yeah, I'm not as gritty as my dad, nowhere near. And he was not as gritty as his dad that served in World War II. And so we've all, but however, we are in a different way, extremely gritty. I'm wondering how you and your teaching base are bringing themselves into the next generation, being able to relate in such a way that those kids can understand what this grit is and what's needed and how. Tell me a little bit about that teaching process, maybe a little bit even more about that practice that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of this is being very transparent with them and letting them behind the scenes, or maybe it's a good way to say, hey, we're going to pull back the curtain on not only our own lives, because of where we're at today, but all those videos you see on YouTube and all those things out there where everybody makes it look effortless. Well, let me tell you, as early as 6, 7, 8, 9, here's what's behind that. Thousands and thousands of failures, practices, like I said, intentional focus on things that they want to try to master. What you're not seeing on social media is the effort. You're seeing the talent, especially on shows like America's Got Talent and The Voice. Like that. You're seeing the final product. What you're not seeing is the pain, the effort, the diligence, the commitment on the blood, the sweat, the tears to get on stage. Even if it's just somebody's filming a friend with an iPhone, that still can become a megastar overnight, right? And so they see this and, I want to do that. But what they don't realize, again, is everything behind the scenes. And so those feelings of frustration, those are normal. Those breakdowns are going to happen. All of us experience those things. We did as teachers, we did as administrators, so you will as well. But to get to here, you have to be willing to put in the effort. And the studies show effort counts twice over talent. Talent is great, but effort counts twice. And I can't explain it as well as Angela Duckworth by any stretch, but getting them to really understand some of those concepts. And then the other thing we're probably working on more than we ever have before is trying to make practice a habit. Because again, they're very, they struggle with habits, I think this generation does. And then young people in general, routines, they love them when they get, when they happen, but they just aren't naturally hardwired to look for them any longer. They're not built into their day anymore. There's so many things grasping for their attention, out there. They're very busy. They're very scheduled. I mean, kindergartners and first graders know what their schedule is already. Yeah. So if we can get them in that, hey, practice, make it a routine, building of those skills that you're working on, make it a routine, build it into your day. Again, these are life skills you and I have probably learned over time to be successful. We're teaching them proactively this generation.
I'm wondering, Dr. Smith, we talked a little bit about generational, and you're talking about teaching. I'm concerned about the teachers. I know a lot of teachers. I've been involved in education, and I know they want to be successful. They're not in the job to make money. They want to change lives and impact lives. Is it hard on teachers today, knowing if we're seeing a lack of grit, a lack of accomplishment, a lack of drive to do better? Are teachers having an issue saying, I just can't make the impact I want to. I just can't make a difference. Are they having issues with success on their own, or is it just they need to show more grit and have to do it? How is the teacher dealing with this?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, matter of fact, teacher well-being, as we're calling it, teacher mental health, teacher well-being is a serious focus of educators all over the country. Again, public and private schools. They are overwhelmed. I mean, COVID, of course, exposed this as well and made it worse to some degree. But they do really feel like they are needing to work hard to understand what their customer now, who it is that they're dealing with, because the generational differences have become so glaring. You know, there's not that blurry line between the boomers and the Xers and the millennials that there used to be.
Yeah.
A lot of Xers teaching a lot of Zs with millennial parents in between. And the differences in those 2-3 generations are very big. So again, yes, there's a lot that stays the same. We get that, but sometimes that's overly cliche. There are some stark differences that are very taxing on teachers, as you suggested. And they are having to learn, okay, not only do I need to be a master of this content, I now need to be a master of this new generation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to work with them because I cannot make the assumption it will work with their parents or their grandparents.
Yeah. Are we seeing an issue with having enough teachers in the workplace? I know there's a problem in employment in general, where through whatever reason, perhaps even some lack of grit, people aren't showing up to work. The workforce has shrunk. And they're just, I don't know what they're doing instead. And no one can figure that out. If I knew that, I'd be a millionaire. Are we having trouble getting teachers to stay in the classroom and deal with this, or what's that like?
Yeah, most definitely. I think all are, and from coast to coast. Yeah, wow. No doubt. I mean, the number of college students going and majoring in education is definitely down. I mean, I think the consensus and the perception is, you're going to be in for a challenge.
Yeah.
For that challenge, and you're passionate about getting through to children, okay, then this is the career for you. But understand that it's going to be a lot of work, and there's going to be some big differences between how you went to school and what school looks like right now. Yeah. So we are finding teacher shortages across the country, no matter what form of education that you're in.
So, Dr. Smith, you're the superintendent at Mansfield Christian Schools. It's a private school, a school of choice. People come to you for a specific type of education. They make that choice on their own. What advice do you have for parents that are listening now that aren't in private school, other than go to private school? But what advice do you have that are in a public school setting and grit is not being shown? What should they look for? What can they do on their own? Is there anything that you would suggest for them to kind of help their kids along through this thing that maybe they're not even realizing is happening?
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I would say, recognize it, look for it. Like you said, what are the patterns? You're probably already seeing these things at home. Right? You're probably asking them more than, quality parent is not just saying, hey, did you get your homework done? They're asking a little bit, because if the child says yes, maybe prod a little bit more and say, okay, what did you have, by the way, got done? Did you have math tonight? Did you have English tonight? Did you have social studies? Oh, and what'd you do? Yeah, I got my social studies. Well, what was that about? And then maybe talk through that and try to find out if there's any areas where you could see some exposure to a lack of grit, or if here's a classic one. But yeah, I started my homework, but I didn't understand it. So I'm going to have to wait, ask the teacher tomorrow. Okay, well, that's a classic response from a student that is shut down. And maybe there's some sincere, hey, we didn't cover this, I don't know what we're doing. But there also could be something that, with a little bit more effort, he probably could have got through that obstacle. And so you look for those patterns and trends. Does your child finish their homework a lot, or do they never have anything to do? Chances are good that's not reality. Most kids have plenty to do. Even most teachers assign at minimum reading homework, in public and private schools and things like that. So, you start to question and prod a little bit when they routinely have nothing to do or have shut down early. Oh yeah, I got everything done, 5 subjects done in half an hour. Okay, maybe I want to prod for that a little bit. So when I see those things, okay, can I work with them on that and then try to find out, okay, what seems to be the struggle here that they're not overcoming? And then don't worry about, I don't understand algebra either. So I was bad at math. So yep, let's leave that to the teacher. Let's leave that to their friends, things like that. Because most parents are going to opt out of that too, especially in the secondary. I don't remember geometry, or I don't remember this, that, and the other. So yeah, that's good. No, back up and say, let's take the content out of it. Let me try to talk my child through some, again, what I said before, like the teachers are doing. What are gritty behaviors? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried this? Can you go back and review some prior chapters? Maybe there's some knowledge. Again, things that would probably come obvious to you and I that aren't coming obvious so much to the kids. And we can probably help them overcome at least this is how you become a gritty person, a person with perseverance, and not necessarily this is how you master tonight's algebra homework. And separate that from the behavior and tackle that as a parent.
And I think that's what it is. I at least a piece of it is finding the passion. Some kids just don't want to do their algebra. We've heard that. I remember saying it. I'm never going to use this. Why do I have to learn it? Right.
Yes.
And in a non-gritty world, I really don't have to learn it. I've got my phone. I can Google search anything I want. I really don't have to do it. And so finding that passion of accomplishment, perhaps, or reward or whatever it might be, because, and I like to end the show with the following question, like what's next for you and for grit? And I'm actually concerned, like, what do we think the next generation looks like? If you're successful, like what's your next hurdle? Are we at the top of this problem? Are we at the bottom of this spot? Like what's next for you in trying to continue to instill grit in our young people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I certainly had a crystal ball, but you're exactly right. I think helping them look at the big picture maybe is a good place where we're probably headed. Helping them have a sense of life direction, maybe even a little bit earlier. And then, like you said, what does it look like to discover your passion? And what does it look like to develop that over time? Because the studies also show that a lot of people who are really good at things in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, they didn't discover that necessarily in their youth. They had to work through some things, and then it developed over time. Then their passion for that deepened. So how can we help kids work through that, perhaps even earlier than what they have in the past, so that they don't become 30, 40 years old and still trying to find some sort of sense of direction and a calling in life and a purpose in life, because I just never stayed with anything long enough to develop a deep passion.
Yeah. And that's what it's really all about, isn't it? It's about we're raising children, raising kids to be young adults, young, prosperous, helpful, contributing members of our society. Whether they got an A in geography or a B, and it really ultimately at the end doesn't matter. But did they learn what they needed to do to accomplish the things in life that they need to accomplish? And I thank you and your team for working on this and bringing this to life, because it means you're not just saying, it's just kids today. Let's just teach them and we'll figure it out later. I appreciate your going above and beyond to make a difference as far as that goes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it is a lot of work. I can't believe my 30th year. You and I have talked about that before.
Yeah.
And all these changes, and it's just been incredible to stay with it. And in some days, it's exhausting, but in other ways, it's greatly rewarding too. When you work with a child who starts to show grit, really perseveres, and recognizes that passion. So it's a wonderful profession, but certainly has its challenges.
Yeah. And what's great is that it's funny. I've got 3 kids of my own. I've raised all 3 of them the exact same. They're all 3 completely different. Like they're going to be okay. Our kids are going to be okay. They're going to figure it out one way or another, regardless of how much we screw them up, right? As old people. But the key is that we're trying our best to help them learn and overcome. Folks, this is an amazing topic, a different way of looking at Dash of Grit, but still an important way to instill and to try to keep this idea of grit in the future. Quick word for our sponsor and our the provider of the show, Spire Marketing. We are a company that likes to help with gritty situations. If your business or organization is trying to overcome things and reach new levels of success, Spire likes to do that in the way of marketing and the format of helping you accomplish those goals. So if you need some help with that, need some extra grit, some extra power, let us know. We're Spire Marketing, and you can reach us at spiread.com. I'm Brian Leflock. I'm Director of Sales at Spire and a host of Dash of Grit. And I thank you to my friend, Dr. Smith, for sharing this story. I think it's really vulnerable of you to share that, look, man, things are changing and we have to change with it because it's the kids that matter. And this is what we're doing. And so thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thank you for having me on. Always enjoy it.
Hope we'll have you on another 80 episodes. We'll
okay,
block it in
good.
now.
All right. First one to be repeat. I'll look forward to being the first third.
You've got it. You're on the books. My friend, thank you so much. And if you'd like to hear more from Dr. Smith, he was our second guest. And so look back and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page and you'll find him there at dashofgrit.com. And he shares an amazing story of how he overcame some things in his past to overcome and become successful. So this is Dash of Grit. We do it once a week. Come back again and we'll see you then. Until then, be gritty and win the day.
This is a Dash of Grit. Recipes for success from courageous leaders who overcome challenges and build great things.